Hello, Anne. Welcome back.
Hello.
This is another episode of Ask Eddie and Anne. And we should just I don't know how your day went, Anne, but mine was, even though I never left the house, it was a little stressful today.
Yeah.
Just a lot of deadlines and things creeping up on me as I prepare to go on this TCM cruise, which I guess I don't know when this episode is airing, so I'm always at sea, but I will literally be at sea at some point. So
Yeah.
anyway,
This is
but
airing November 10th.
okay, that's actually the day before I go on the cruise. So bon voyage, everybody, or wish me bon voyage,
Oh my
whatever.
gosh.
Yes, and I hope I'll see you soon after we get back from the high seas. Um, so let's get rolling. Let's do
Oh,
this.
okay. Uh, this is from Phil at Dedham, Massachusetts. Not sure if I've asked this before, but can you discuss the various reference libraries dealing with film? How does one get access to them? How do you know what they contain? Do they include film you can watch as well as paper information? Is there a charge to use if their facilities? I'm assuming they're all in Southern Cal, but are there other locations around the country?
Sounds like Phil wants to do some research.
Possibly.
Um, Phil, most of these uh, are do not cost you much of anything, including the Margaret Herrick Library at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, which is in Los Angeles, and anybody can use that. I mean, they're sticklers about granting access because people used to steal stuff, and that is not possible now. Um, but that's easy. The universities at UCLA and USC have big libraries, but also there are places all around the country. I mean, besides the Library of Congress, various universities have libraries that hold a lot of stuff. The Harry Ransom Library in Austin, Texas, is a good one. I know that's where Ann Savage sent her papers. The Joe Lewis's stuff is at the Art Institute of Chicago. So there's a lot of this stuff all around, and it doesn't. And a lot of it you can actually access online. If you like go to the Margaret Herrick Library at AMPUS, and or if you want to research the UCLA Film and Television Archive, you can do that online now. You can go to the BFI and look for stuff. I can't guarantee you that all of the information has been digitized, but you asked, how do you know what they contain? In a lot of cases, you can just find that online. And I mean, these are by and large institutions that are happy to grant access with certain precautionary measures taken so that copyrighted material and stuff like that doesn't get disseminated improperly. But anybody can access these things. That's the whole point. So I wish you luck, Phil. Okay, now Joe, question number two. Joe wants to know. I don't know where Joe's from or anything. He's just Joe. He's just Joe. He's
Joe.
Noir Joe. Is there a more violent surprise ending in Noir than Angel Face? He wants to know. Now, of course, as you know, Anne, these are somewhat problematic when people say stuff like this because we have to answer this
Spoiling the ending of Angel.
without spoiling the ending of Angel Face, or for that matter, if we do have an idea for a more surprising and violent ending, then we're spoiling that film by saying yes, it's whatever it may be. I don't. Can you think of one off the top of your head that?
Kiss Me Deadly.
Yeah, Kiss Me Deadly is pretty crazy. Yes, and I think in the I don't even know what you call it now. In the apocalyptic cut, it's even more shocking because everything blows up and Mike and Velda don't get out of the house. If you've seen the restored version of Kiss Me Deadly, then it's not quite as bad because even though it appears the world is blowing up, oh, who cares? Mike and Velda are okay.
Okay.
They've been radioactively contaminated and they'll certainly both die of cancer before long, but at least they made it out of the house. I think Angel Face is so great because it's just so unexpected and it's done so fast that there's just no chance for you to prepare for it, and then it's just over.
Yeah.
And it is a spectacular stunt that is pulled off at the end of that film. But it's the surprise thing. Most noir, of course, is about the inevitable happening. So there are few that have this shocking surprise ending like Angel Face has. I mean, I was going to say what, like Crisscross or something, but no. I mean, it's been building up to that ending the whole way. I mean, the characters are doomed to meet their fate. So I guess, Joe, the answer is no. There is no more violent and surprising ending in noir until I look at the Facebook feed for this, and then people remind me.
Yeah.
But what about
down?
Yeah. Okay.
This is from Douglas. What do you think of $1 Million Weekend from 1984? That might be a transposition. $1 million, murder, exotic locales by air, all the fixings. Not familiar with Gene Raymond. Oh my God,
yeah.
Osa Masson is alluring. Francis Feder is creepy beyond belief.
Channeling Peter
Lorre. Oh, and by the way, I am bringing all episodes of Ask Eddie and Ann for the second time. Priceless sources of what to watch next. Thanks. I thought keeping the compliment.
That's crazy. He's binging the episodes. Holy cow. Yeah. Douglas, you're a good man. But I'm guilty. I have not seen $1 Million Weekend. So that's a good one because now it's something for me to watch. We're tossing out all these titles that people say, oh, thank you. Now I'll go look for that. Well, I guess I obviously have to look for $1 Million Weekend because I haven't seen it before. And I'm assuming it's from 1948, not from 1984.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what I don't think sure that was the numbers were transposed.
Yeah. I don't think Osa Mason was making too many films in 1984 or Gene Raymond for that matter. But I'm curious. I mean, I don't really know that much about the movie. So are you familiar with this film?
Not at all. It was a complete surprise to me.
Okay. So good one, Douglas. You have stumped the two A's and that's it. So I'm going to have to go look for that. Me now. Okay. And this, I'm assuming this is not the same person because this is Doug, not Douglas. It's Doug in Silver Spring, Maryland, which I probably just saw Doug when I was back there for the Noir Festival. Doug says, as a lifelong Billy Wilder fan, I'd like to know if you would classify any of these 3 Wilder films as comedy noir. Some Like It Hot, The Apartment, and The Fortune Cookie. Seeing as it both begins and ends with gangland massacres, I'd be very surprised if Some Like It Hot doesn't qualify as comedy noir. Never, honestly, Doug, I have never heard Some Like It Hot considered comedy noir. I mean, because to me, it's less noir than it's like a gangland thing. It's kind of, it's more a riff on like 30s gangster movies than it is noir. I mean, Unfaithfully Yours is the kind of thing that skews really close to, that's comedy noir to me. And the other thing is like The Apartment, of course, is like the original dramedy. I use that term all the time now, but definitely
Yeah, I mean, I
uh
don't even think of that as a comedy. I mean, I guess
no.
you know what I mean. To me, it's just like a drama. But
Yeah, I mean it's funny because Jack Lemmon is funny, I mean he plays it like he's a but that's what I love about that movie is he's a funny guy in a tragic circumstance, and he just it plays out that way, which is great. And I love The Fortune Cookie. I love that movie, but again, I've never really uh Walter Matthau would get to his noir roles post Fortune Cookie. Well, pre Fortune Cookie when he was a bad guy, and post Fortune Cookie he's a good guy.
yeah.
As will all be made clear by Vince Keenan in the next issue of the Noir City magazine, where he writes a feature about Walter Matthau and
Awesome. I
noir.
didn't know that.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I just read the piece the other day, and it really because it gets into that very thing that when Matthau was a character actor, I think it's pretty interesting that he played a lot of heavies
Uh-huh.
when he was a character actor. And then once he did these pictures with Billy Wilder and became a leading man, then all of a sudden he was cast in stuff like The Laughing Policeman and The Taking of Pelham 123 and Charlie Varick, and a few other things where he's sort of, the noir anti-hero. Interesting development in his career.
And how can someone get North City Magazine, Eddie?
Oh, they can sign up for our mailing list and then they can make a donation of $20 or more, and they will be able to receive the digital version of the Noir City magazine. But they might still want to get the print version of the magazine, which is now available through Amazon.com. But I'm proud to say that since we've been offering the print edition of the magazine, every time we release one, it immediately becomes the number one best-selling publication under movie guides and reference. I don't know how they make these distinctions, but I guess it is a movie guide and a reference book. But every single issue we have released has immediately gone to number one, and that's very gratifying.
Yeah,
So,
it is. And so that's you go to filmnoirfoundation.org.
yes, remember the .org, vitally important, because we are a nonprofit entity.
We are a nonprofit.
Okay.
This is from Kim in Illinois. I recently rewatched A Guest in the House starring Ann Baxter, Ralph Bellamy, and Ruth Warwick. It's one of my favorite noir films, but I get intense pushback when I describe it as a noir. I'm told it's a psychological thriller, to which I argue, yeah, have you never seen a noir film before? Anyway, I thought I'd turn to you guys, noir or not.
That's the perfect response, Kim. That's great. Yeah, you guys never seen a noir film before? I like the movie. It's hard to find it in. I mean, that's a movie that actually should get a restoration. I'm not positive it's in the public domain, but it is hard to find that film in good condition. And Kim, I think that you're probably experiencing that pushback you get is probably from people who have that totally outdated attitude that noir is guys in trench coats and fedoras, and if it's a psychological drama with a female protagonist, that's what it is. It's not film noir, it's a psychological drama with a female protagonist. But seriously, I don't really buy into that at all. So I'm endorsing your fondness for A Guest in the House. I'm not going to talk much about it because I don't want to spoil it for people who maybe haven't seen the movie. But you can tell people that, well, Eddie Muller told me it was a film noir. I definitely show it on. I mean, we've never shown it at a Noir City Festival because it's next to impossible to find a good print of it. Mm. So, but if we ever did, I would show it on Noir Alley, obviously. I like Ann Baxter very much. I think she's a very underrated actress.
She did a great episode of Columbo, which is the one that Edith Head has a guest shot in.
Oh, very good. I need to go back and do my Columbo binge watching. I haven't. I mean, everybody loves that show so much, and you hear so much about it, and I haven't watched any of them since it was actually on the air.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone through it everything at least twice, and I wound up buying it on DVD because I just, I loved it when I was a kid, but then it was like watching it again as an adult because I knew who all the actors were. I mean,
Yeah.
as a kid, I didn't know who all these people were. So that's also another amazing thing about the show is the people that were on that show is just incredible.
Well, the guest stars, is that was always a great thing about television back then, right?
Yeah,
There
guest
was
starring.
Yeah, and there was so much work for people that you knew from the movies
Yeah.
who then made the and so shows like Columbo and Murder She Wrote, and
Mm-hmm.
my favorite is The Fugitive, where it was always the guest babe.
Yeah.
Because David Jansen, it was never like the guys who were guest stars were one thing, but it was always like also starring Tuesday Weld as blah blah blah, Elizabeth Montgomery, Suzanne Plachette, and they were all just total noir women.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's beside the point, right? How we got onto
I think I
Fugitive
mentioned Ann Baxter, and I immediately brought
Ann Baxter. That was
plays
it.
an actress, and
well, perfect.
yeah, she's great.
And so many of those shows were so smart about the old films, and they were paying tribute to them. Because the way like people would be cast in Murder She Wrote or Columbo or something, it was like they were totally aware of that performer's reputation, and they used it on the shows.
Oh great. God, my favorite episode of Columbo is Forgotten Lady with oh my God,
she's forgotten. It's okay, Ann. She's forgotten.
Jamie Lee Curtis's mother. My God,
that would be Janet Leigh.
And she's plays this woman who's retired from pictures but had been in musicals, and she gets she has like Alzheimer's, and she murders her husband, but then she doesn't remember killing him because she's trying to make a comeback. And then John Payne plays this guy that had been her co-star and in love with her, but he got into a car accident and became like a choreographer. But her performance is so heart-wrenching, because she's having problems, and John Payne's fantastic in it. He's just great. But that's my single favorite episode. But it's great because when she's showing her old film to Columbo, she invites him over for a screening night, and you also see her watching her own pictures. They're taken from a musical she had done.
Okay.
So it was footage from the musical.
So it's like so in the same breath, they're kind of paying tribute to Sunset Boulevard, where Norma is watching her old silent pictures in the screening room with Joe, and now
yeah.
Do you remember what the musical was that they showed for Janet Leigh? I guess she made
I believe she played a character named Rosie in it.
Wonder if
they're kind of obscure because they don't tell you what the movie is because they don't want to make it too
right. Well, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm going to have to find that episode. Jeez,
it's really good.
And is it me reading now? I think so.
I don't know. Did we even answer the question?
Well, yeah, about guest in the house. Kim was just looking for endorsement, and I think I provided that.
You said yes, and it is your turn to read. So you're
okay. Very good. So Brian in Toronto, going outside our country for this one. Brian says he was thinking about movie stars of the 40s and 50s and which ones had never done noir or neo-noir, particularly actresses. He says Monroe was in, he says Blackboard Jungle, but he means Asphalt Jungle, and Niagara, but we don't associate her with noir, unlike Veronica Lake or Elizabeth Scott. Audrey Hepburn was one name that came to mind. Then I wondered if Wait Until Dark could be considered a neo-noir. No. However, Wikipedia lists it as, guess what? A psychological thriller. And then he says, a number of films they list are examples of neo-noir or neo-noir. So anyway, how would you define or separate these two similar genres? Well, I think we did that in the last question. And also, if you haven't been asked before, which stars who never made a film noir do you think would have been great in one? And he says, John Wayne in a noir. He says he might have made a good villain, but of course he was John Wayne was Robert Rosson's choice to play Willie Stark in All the King's Men. But Wayne refused to do it because he said the film was un-American. So, there you go. I don't know about the film, but, I don't know if he would have been any better than Broderick Crawford. But anyway, a couple of things here, Brian. Number one, when you're talking about Marilyn, she did do a bit of noir, and you left out Don't Bother to Knock, which she made at 20th Century Fox, which was the film that was made to make her an actress and not just a bit of supporting eye candy. Mm-hmm. That was the film that was made specifically to give her a dramatic role, and it's opposite Widmark. It's very noir. In fact, I'm showing it on Noir Alley. I think it's the first film in 2023.
Yeah, and the novel based on is really good.
Yeah, Charlotte Armstrong wrote the novel Mischief, which is really good. Yeah. Like most of her stuff. And I think Brian, we kind of touched on the psychological thriller versus noir. To me, the reason I don't really consider Wait Until Dark to be, that's a suspense film. That's a thriller, right? Because you have a completely innocent person being terrorized by these guys, and it's like, how is she possibly going to survive this? It's a woman in jeopardy film, and it's a thriller, and all that stuff. But it doesn't have, there were films like that in the classic noir era, but they looked like noir.
Right.
And so we're granting them this noir status. Sometimes but by and large, I have found that in many cases, hey, who's this? This is
Ellie.
Ellie.
That's the sister, this Tyrion's sister.
There's never ending. It's a parade of cats coming through here. So, Ellie is very affectionate. Look at that. Oh, star in the making.
Yeah.
Oh, just wants to cuddle up. Very nice.
Yeah.
Anyway, as I said previously, a lot of these distinctions are, if they don't want to try finding a film called neo-noir that has a female protagonist, right? It's not easy. The Last Seduction is obviously one, yeah. But other than that, not easy. So I think critics who must label things started calling female-centric thrillers and stuff, psychological thrillers instead of neo-noir or any of that stuff. Not a huge not a huge deal for me anymore, to be quite honest. Just watch the films, and
enjoy. I'm sorry.
Watch the films and enjoy them, whatever the hell genre they fall in, right? Okay. Man, that Ellie is she is one affectionate animal.
She is. Oh. I'm gonna miss her and her brother when they're gone. 4 cats is too many, but I'm still gonna miss them when they go home.
I know. I had 4 in this household at one time. Actually, at one point I had 5. One was just kind of passing through.
Yeah.
But now I'm just down to the one. Just down to the one. But that cat is trouble enough for 5. So
yeah. I'm sorry.
Maybe I should just keep reading the
Let's read the
questions.
questions until I get her settled down a little.
Okay, very good. Andy wants to know about Robert Wise. He is one of my favorite noir directors and made some of my favorite noir films, like The Setup and Born to Kill, and particularly Odds Against Tomorrow. But despite this, he doesn't seem to be mentioned in the canon of great noir filmmakers, along with the likes of Fritz Lang, Nick Ray, Robert Siadmak, and others. And Andy believes one of the reasons, well, Andy says one of the reasons he loves his work as a filmmaker I'm sorry, let me start all over again. One of the reasons I love his work is he was a filmmaker that understood noir was a style or mode rather than a genre, applying it to films well outside the typical noir melodrama or detective story fare. And he is saying, the same kind of visual aesthetic is shown in The Body Snatcher, a horror film, Blood on the Moon, Western, and I Want to Live, which is a prison film, I suppose. I don't know how I would actually classify that. And so Andy is really asking if we agree that he is an underappreciated as a noir master, and if so, why do you think that is? Andy raises some interesting points with that question.
I mean, I wrote an essay on I Want to Live for North City Magazine, actually.
That is correct. Yeah, that was great.
And it's a great film. And it is noir in some.
I mean, I write about it at length in my book, and but I'm just saying I have no problem talking about it in terms of noir, but when it comes to these classifications and things, I don't really know how that film is classified. I don't think people really call it a prison film because it doesn't get to the prison until very late.
Well, it's kind of a social justice movie, really.
It's clearly an anti-capital punishment film. It's also kind of a newspaper movie because the Ed Montgomery character, played by Simon Oakland, is so prominent in the film. So it's a mix of a lot, and it's in some respects it's a biopic because it's based on Barbara Graham, who was a real person, but as for Robert Wise, I think number one, Robert Wise doesn't get credit for being one of I'm just going to say probably one of the 5 top film directors in the history of Hollywood.
Yeah.
Noir or otherwise. I mean, the movies that guy has made, I mean, even if you don't love musicals, right? The guy directed West Side Story and The Sound of Music, for God's sakes.
Yeah, and he also directed The Haunting, which is one of the greatest horror films.
One of the greatest horror films. He directed Day the Earth Stood Still, one of the great science fiction movies. He directed all the noir films that Brian just talked about. And he had an incredibly long career. If you add on the stuff he did as an editor before he even got around to making films, it's an extraordinary career. But because he did films in so many different genres, critics never considered him an auteur, which never gets directors the amount of ink in books, right? Because if you're good at everything, you're just a filmography. If you're good at one thing, then you can be the subject of a doctoral thesis, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. And there's, with Robert Wise, it's like, how many great films do you have to make? But it's that whole obsession with auteur theory, right? Too.
It is honestly the only explanation, because it's not just Wise. I mean, until our colleague Alan Rody fixed it by writing his massive biography of Michael Curtiz.
Yeah.
Curtiz had the same problem as Robert Wise. It was like the guy is just too good at everything. He can make Captain Blood and Adventures of Robin Hood, and then make The Breaking Point and make Casablanca and King Creole. There's
Yeah,
there was like
yeah,
he could direct anything.
yeah.
And instead of that being a plus on the critical ledger, it becomes a minus. Ever since Andrew Saris, compiled all that stuff in that book American Cinema,
Yeah.
everybody judges directors based on that book. I did it for years and years and years. Like, these are the guys in the pantheon, you
Yeah.
know? And it's like, I'm not begrudging Howard Hawks or John Ford or any of those people their status, but, you know, uh, directors that could do anything, I don't get why that was considered a mark against them.
Hmm.
Right. So, yeah. Andy was a really sweet guy. I had the pleasure of talking to him several times, and just a lovely guy, which also doesn't help your critical reputation. You'd be
Yeah.
better off
I
punching
mean,
somebody in the face once in a while if you want to have people write books about you. But
yeah.
Robert Wise was just the sweetest guy on earth. You could never picture him like bawling somebody out on a movie set. He
Yeah.
would just deal with it in a very quiet and calm way.
Well, and that's one of the things too, like always drives me nuts when people talk about the making of The Shining. One, I think The Shining's fucking overrated. We'll put that aside. um, aside
Well,
from,
it's certainly, there's no film that has had more read into it
yeah,
that probably isn't there
yeah,
than The
definitely.
Shining. Yeah.
And that's a
But
fun
you,
documentary. But the way he was with Shelley Duvall on the set of that, because this is how it's like, well, can't you direct an actor? Because you knew how to direct an actor, you wouldn't have to basically psychologically torture her.
yeah,
So,
exactly.
and interesting, you didn't do that to the male lead of the film, but you felt plenty comfortable doing that to the female lead.
Yeah. Yeah. And if people don't know what Anne is referring to, I mean, a lot has come out recently about frankly, the abuse,
Yeah.
that she suffered making that film because, besides his usual obsessiveness and perfectionism and doing 200 takes of a scene,
Yeah.
uh he was just making life hell for her to try to get a more terrified and unnerved reaction out of everything she was doing. And whatever, I mean, I just feel sorry for her. But this brings up a really interesting point, because um the breadth of movie making is so extreme that you go from people like Kubrick and Fritz Lang and even William Wyler to some extent. These were hardcore perfectionists who would do things a million times, down to the Eddie Kahns of the world, who were like, she's wearing a different outfit in this shot. He goes, who cares? Nobody's going to
No one
notice.
noticed.
Nobody's going to notice that. So, but there is no right way. There's just the way people go about doing it. And so when I hear those stories about 200 takes, I mean, my initial reaction is always that person's insane, because there can't be that significant a difference between take 87 and, unless it's a blown take.
Right.
But it is sort of like, well, what is it that you're looking for? And then it's like, well, I'll know it when I find it. We have to get there. And it's like, I honestly think those days are over.
Yeah, and I think it's a
You
good thing, but but to me, it's also like, well, then you need to learn how to direct actors. I mean,
that
that's what it's come down to. If I had to do something 200 times at my job, they would fire me.
Of course, of course, of course.
And it's like, and you're not, and it's like, you can't, and I just always have a great deal of respect for directors who are really good with actors, because if you're good with actors, you got a good script, that film's gonna be great.
Mhm.
You
Oh,
know,
I've said this many a time and kind of I think talked myself out of teaching jobs because I say basically in the end it comes down to good script, well acted, right? I mean that's why people watch narrative films.
mhm.
It has to be a good script, and it really needs to be well acted. And I know there are a lot of directors who would agree with me on this and say, yeah, and my job is to get the most out of the script and to get the best performances out of the actors, right?
Yeah.
Not to kind of get in the way and show off. I mean, and I'm not saying that, a beautifully made film with great imagery and everything is showing off. That's not the case. But I mean, it can help if the script sucks completely, then you might as well just shoot the works and try to do something interesting to keep people's attention. But if the script is really good, try not to screw it up.
Okay.
Okay,
Talked about Robert Wise. Um,
we're at number
you're
number 8.
eight. So you read 8.
Oh, okay. Well, I read 7 too. Okay.
Oh,
Okay,
oh,
number
right.
8.
That threw us off.
Okay. You go.
I go. Okay. And this is from our friend Ed. I am fascinated. It's 2 questions. I am fascinated by Raymond Burr's performances in several noirs as they are so different from his Perry Mason persona. Did Eddie ever get to interview Burr about his tough guy roles in various noir films, and what did Burr think of them? 2, has Eddie ever seen the movie Diva? Would that be considered a neo-noir? I saw the film 40 years ago and I recalled being impressed with it.
Okay. Ed, I am sorry to say that I never did have the pleasure of meeting Raymond Burr. He has a winery right up the road from me, and there's a beautiful little tribute to him as an actor in the tasting room of the winery, including several articles from the Noir City magazine.
All right.
I think Carl Stewart, who is a great sports writer who used to contribute to the magazine, wrote one of those. That's up on the wall in the tasting room. And Robert Benavides, the Raymond Burr's partner, has been kind of a friend of the festival. We've had some wine donated to the Noir City Festival from the winery, but that's all just dancing around your question, which is no. I never did get the opportunity to speak to him about that. And yes, I have seen Diva, although not really since it came out. I saw it when it first came out. And yeah, it's absolutely. I mean, Diva is one of those films that's sort of an homage to old movies anyway.
Yeah.
Even though it's very much very, very modern at the time, it was kind of cutting edge.
Yeah.
In a sense when that film came out, but the DNA in that movie is very, come on, it's French, they love their crime thrillers and their noir sagas and stuff. So there's no question that Jean-Jacques Benex, the director of that film, was, and if there was any need to know his noir credentials, after he did Diva, he made The Moon in the Gutter,
Yeah.
based on the David Goodis novel, which was completely a noir homage, done in a totally artificial style, like the way, kind of like the way Coppola shot One from the Heart. They're very similar films in that, and Nastassja Kinski is in both of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny how when I just thought about that and I said, Diva was pretty cutting edge for its time. I can so remember when that movie came out and how it did feel like this was as forward as filmmaking had gone at that time,
Yeah.
while paying tribute to the older movies it obviously revered. And now it's like, holy cow, that seems like ancient times. Like Diva, holy cow. I haven't thought of that film in, like 30 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Uh-uh.
You do start feeling older.
I know.
Anyway, okay. Roland, love that name, Roland. The headless Thompson gunner. Okay. In Dorothy Dandridge's Only Noir, Malaga, was there ever any plans? Oh, I don't know how this. Oh, look at that. More cat butt. Were there ever any plans to put her in other noir films? Is basically what Roland is asking. Or was the racial element deemed too controversial for white audiences who embraced noir? Well, first off, Malaga is a pretty cool movie. It's kind of a heist movie, uh, very much enlivened by the fact that Dorothy Dandridge has a interracial affair with God. Was it Kurt Jurgens? Kurt Jurgens, I think, was the co-star in that, and it's good. It's a good movie that I would love to see restored. I know that Warner Brothers owns it, and I have talked a few times about getting it released from captivity. I don't believe that's happened yet. But I don't know that she was ever to be in any other noir films. But that also was not an American-made film, so that movie never would have been made
Yeah.
in the United States. That's a British film, I believe, and anyway, and a good one too. That I hope we'll see. Maybe the Film Noir Foundation can do something to get that film resurrected. But I don't in this country. I don't think anybody even knew much about Malaga when it came out. I don't think it was played a lot of places, maybe big
Yeah.
cities, but that was it.
Okay. This is from Eric. Reading your new and updated Dark City, I keep learning about films I've never seen. I wanted to see that. I want to see that. I do want to see them. I assume, correct me if I'm wrong, that their non-appearance on TCM has to do with demands of copyright owners. And I assume those demands have grown since the streaming platforms have multiplied. For all I know, there is a film noir platform being organized. But I hope you're organizing it.
No. No, Eric, that is not happening anytime soon. Although, well, let me answer this in parts. First off, thank you for the compliment about Dark City. Everything has to do with the copyright owners. So, and it's not. I don't know that I would use the word demands of the copyright owners. It's just sort of the way it works. Nobody's demanding much. It's just this is the way it works. I mean, I can demand that we show a film, and you know, people will either listen to that or they'll say there's no way that it can work out. But yes, and your assumption that it is becoming more difficult because of the diverse streaming platforms is actually 100% correct, because it's if everybody has a streaming platform, then it becomes much more difficult for an independent entity like a Turner Classic Movies or a Criterion channel that are not specifically affiliated with one studio, like a Netflix or an Amazon or Paramount Plus or Disney Plus or HBO Max in the case of TCM, because there is a TCM hub
Yeah.
on HBO Max, but there are no hosts. We don't Our stuff isn't on HBO Max. It's only on TCM. So yeah, all of that stuff figures in, and I just want to remind everybody that all of this was supposed to make for ease of use and be less costly for the end consumer. So let's just all remember that when there are like 12 streaming services and they're all charging you like $13.99 a month.
Yeah.
Remind me how this was all supposed to benefit the consumer. I think we've talked about this recently where I said,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, it's the whole thing too, is also they only hold the rights for a short amount of time. So it's not like a video store where the video store would own the copy and could rent it out as long as they wanted to, regardless if the film was in or out of print.
right.
And I just want to one more time plug Canopy. If you have a library card, you can access Canopy through your library account. And they have a ton of content, including like the Flickr Alley releases of some of our films and a lot of great stuff, you know.
Speaking of which,
What?
hold on. If I can do this, don't want to spoil the magic, but
Yay.
brand new Flickr Alley release,
Yes.
El Vampiro Negro, out on Blu-ray and DVD. If people were unaware of this, you actually get both. I'll figure this out. Blu-ray and DVD, and a 32-page fabulous booklet with incredible photographs and things and great special features. So there, I'm plugging that.
Yes. Who restored that film, Eddie?
The Film Noir Foundation, in cooperation with our partners at the UCLA Film and Television Archive and the Hollywood Foreign Press's Charitable Trust, and the Minor Anderson Foundation, which actually helped considerably during a rough patch of that restoration. Yeah, so you can get that now. And the other thing I wanted to quickly add to finish off here what Eric had asked about was it may be noticeable that that noir is what sells now. I mean, it's pretty extraordinary. Like if you do subscribe to the Criterion channel, it is very noticeable that every single month there is a new variation on noir, color noir, Columbia noir. Now it's I forget what the hell it is now, but there's a different noir this month, and there's the films of Ida Lupino, the films of John Garfield, which is absolutely great. So I mean, Criterion gets it, and they're really taking advantage of it. And in some respects, it is sort of the de facto film noir platform when it comes to streaming. And I know there are some other outfits that do like a night of noir streaming or on the cable or something. I can't remember what it is. But no, there at present there is no plan for me to be involved in an all noir streaming platform. That is not in the cards as of yet.
Okay.
Okay, my go. Reg in Ohio says, oh, this is nice. Several years ago, I read your short story, The Grand Inquisitor, in Megan Abbott's anthology, A Hell of a Woman. I thought the story and anthology were great. Thank you. Oh, I see where this is going. Several days ago, my wife and I were watching Noir Alley's presentation of Raw Deal. And when the credits ended, your short movie, The Grand Inquisitor, came on screen, and we were blown away. Thank you. Marcia Hunt was amazing, as were the writing and direction. Thanks. My question is, do you have any more surprises like this coming to future Noir Alleys? Ha ha ha, says Reg in Ohio. No, I actually don't have many more short films with Marcia Hunt up my sleeve. But this will have already passed when this airs. But I did pull a little surprise last weekend when we showed City of Fear, because that movie, Lyle Talbot is one of the stars of that movie, and his grandson Joe Talbot, is a friend. And he made this short documentary about the Noir City Film Festival and the Film Noir Foundation that I convinced TCM without much arm twisting to air following City of Fear. So, and of course, that was Joe's first film as a filmmaker, and now he has gone on to make the fantastic feature Last Black Man in San Francisco with his childhood buddy, Jimmy Fails. And I bet you don't know this, Anne. Joe also directed the new Adele video.
Oh, cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
She saw, I want to say she saw his documentary about Noir City, but she actually saw Last Black Man in San Francisco. And she emailed him and said, "Hey, hi, my name is Adele. I would like you to make this music video for me." And I talked to Joe the other day, and he laughed and he said he thought for quite a number of days that it was a prank,
Yeah, that would be my
that his friends were playing on him, because the subject line of the email was actually, "Hello, it's Adele." Was the subject line. It's like, okay, sure. But the his video is fantastic, and it's a real tribute to old. If you haven't seen it, the song is called "I Drink Wine."
Okay.
And it was shot on the lot at Paramount, and it's obviously Joe was channeling. Well, the way I describe it, it's a cross between Busby Berkeley and The Night of the Hunter.
Oh, nice.
That's
I need to watch that.
I can say that's exactly what it is. Joe agrees.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't whet your appetite, so you can see it just by typing in "I Drink Wine Adele."
Okay.
It'll come up on Google, and you can watch it. It's a terrific piece of work. So I'm so proud of Joe. He's my buddy, and I'm proud of him. So beyond that, I don't know. I'll always keep looking for surprising things to do, as little special things on Noir Alley. But once it becomes expected, then it's no longer a surprise. So, Reg, you'll know it when you see it.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, and this is from Jan in Rockville, Maryland. Have you seen the 1956 film Seconds? I believe it to be the best pure film noir post 1960, and I think it would make a great film to show on Noir Alley.
Yes, of course, I have seen Seconds. And I agree about your assessment. It's a fantastic film, for many, many reasons. And we have shown it at Noir City. But not on Noir Alley, which I probably will do someday when it's a Paramount film. So we're having a little trouble getting Paramount titles right now. But when it circulates through and is in rotation, I will definitely try to snag it and show it. It's a great performance by Rock Hudson and a great performance by John Randolph as Rock Hudson, pre-Rock Hudson. And I just, fantastic James Wong Howe cinematography, and Frankenheimer is it's funny, I don't know if people think what they think of him as a director these days, but he was hot stuff, man, back in the 60s and 70s, and Seconds was a failure when it came out. I mean, it's a cult classic now, but because he had made The Manchurian Candidate before that, which was so avidly reviewed and critiqued until it was removed from distribution, but which I guess people know that story, right?
No, a lot of people don't. You should probably tell people
that Frank Sinatra sort of saw that The Manchurian Candidate disappeared after Kennedy's assassination because he was close to the family and he thought the film was like rude.
Yeah.
That a film like that was out there. So he actually kind of bought it all up and removed it from public view for many, many years. And then Seconds tanked because nobody wanted to see Rock Hudson.
Which is too bad because it's a great it's like a great performance. It is such an incredible, he is so great in that.
It is impossible to not be just torn up when he goes back home to see the house where he used to live, and all. It's just and it's funny, I think that film was so startling visually when it came out. That I think people overlooked how great the performances are, how poignant a lot of the film is about aging and about wanting another chance. they missed it,
Mhm.
and now I think that film, it might be, well, I don't know. John Frankenheimer has made a few great films. I love The Train with
Mhm.
Burt Lancaster is a great film. I think that and In Seconds are my two favorite John Frankenheimer movies. Anyway, I don't know how I got on all that from.
Yeah, and I think one of the things too that's remarkable about Seconds, because you talked about how inventive it was visually, and it's really great that that was James Wong Howe, and at his age, he was making this really cutting edge visual style that you would associate with that time period. But when did he start?
He was a veteran, man, all the way back to the silent era. He
Silent
worked with
period.
Mary Miles Minter,
That's right. Yeah.
and yeah, and then here he is in the '60s, and he had to have been. I don't know exactly how old he was at that point, but I know that about 10 years later, in the mid '70s, I saw him as a guest at the San Francisco International Film Festival, where they did like a career retrospective, and he was such a sweet guy, and he seemed ageless,
Yeah.
and man, in the '60s, it was almost like, okay, we've figured out the studio style. Now we're just going to dive into this whole new way of doing things,
Yeah.
and the fact that this guy could shoot like almost back to back movies as different as HUD and Seconds. I mean, I can't think of two movies visually that are, besides being in black and white, that have a different visual approach than those two films,
Yeah.
and both of them are absolute genius. Can you imagine being a director and finding out that you actually get James Wong Howe as your cameraman?
I'd be pretty damn happy.
Be like, oh man, it's nice to know I'm making the best film of my career,
Yeah.
because he would see to it that making the best film of your career
Oh.
is pretty great. Okay, I think I'm reading now.
Yeah.
Okay, Craig from Carlsbad. Ever since I was required to read Ernest Hemingway in school, I have never been a fan of most of his novels. A lot of machismo seems to permeate his novels. It really puts me off. However, he wrote two great short stories, The Killers, needless to say, and even better, The Short Happy Life of Francis Macomber. I read the latter many years ago and loved it from beginning to end. Was it ever made into a motion picture? If either one of you has read the story or seen the movie, if it exists, I'd like to know your opinions. Also, Eddie, have you ever screened the movie on Noir Alley? Well, wait a second. Have I screened the movie on Noir Alley? Okay. Do you have any idea where I could find it on DVD? Okay. Craig from Carlsbad. Okay. Yeah, it was, that short story was turned into a movie called The Macomber Affair, because The Short Happy Life of Francis Macomber is not going to fit on any movie marquee. So it was The Macomber Affair, and I think it was made in 1940. It's either 47 or 48. I think 48. I can't remember. I guess the studio had to have been Fox, because it's Gregory Peck. Gregory Peck is the star, with Joan Bennett and Robert Preston. It's pretty good. Have you seen it, Ann?
No, no.
Yeah, I think it's a Corda made the picture. Alexander Corda, or
Okay.
I think it was Alexander Corda. And there are certainly noir elements to it, but the fact that it's set in Africa and it has, it's all about big game hunting. I mean, it's not, that's, big game hunting is the backdrop of the story. It's not really what the story's about. And Joan Bennett's fantastic in it. She plays a complete bitch. I mean, just probably the bitchiest Joan Bennett role ever, which is saying something when you've seen Scarlet Street, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but yet I don't love the movie, because I'm going to make a confession here. I am really not a Gregory Peck fan.
Mhm.
What do you think about Gregory Peck?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I was more of not a fan of big game hunting movies. I can, but I mean, Gregory Peck. I'm not like a huge fan of his. I mean, I love him in The Omen. I think that's a fantastic performance, and he just that his performance really made that film work. Yeah, but I'm not like a huge fan of his. He was pretty.
Yeah, I never, it's hard to explain. I was never into Gregory Peck, and I don't like to an almost distracting degree. Like when I watch an old Gregory Peck movie, even if it's like a Hitchcock film like Spellbound, I'm just always kind of put off. Like, oh, too bad this is Gregory Peck. Sorry, Gregory Peck fans, but and the other little bit of trivia about the Macomber affair, which I have not shown on I've never shown it in a festival. I've never shown it on TCM. It is the only other American film that featured Jean Gilley from Decoy. It's the only other role she had. She's like the second female lead, and it's not a big part. It's not a very good part, but she's in it. So I mean that is of interest. And one thing I will say, I totally get it if Hemingway turns people off and the macho business in his stories turns people off, but I will go to my grave as a Hemingway defender because the guy was so vitally important to the development of American literature,
Yeah,
and he came from an era when writers had lives of action
yeah,
in addition to sitting down at a typewriter and writing. And his work as a war correspondent and all that stuff. I mean, he's a very easy target right now because of all of the macho bullshit that's in his short stories and a lot of the novels. But man, I mean, some of those novels are just unbelievable, and nothing would be written the way it is today were it not for his influence back then. And he could write crappy stuff. I mean, I still believe that To Have and Have Not is a crappy book,
yeah.
but it was the basis for some great stuff because of what he chose to talk about or write about.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been a big fan of his, which is funny because but I was like in a English class and we are reading one of his short stories, and someone was trying to say like the people in the classes are not appreciating like how well written this story was, and so I was out there like defending Hemingway, and I thought it was so funny because I'm like not a fan of his, but he was a great writer. I mean, I just don't think you write female characters worth shit. Just
Right.
But you cannot say that he was not a good writer.
Correct. And a immensely influential
Yeah,
writer.
yeah,
And yeah, and I just think that at a certain point you do I mean, this is going to the very popular subject of, do you separate the art from the artist? In Hemingway's case, I don't think it's even, honestly, I don't even think it's that necessary to do that because they're indistinguishable in some ways. But to say because of um, what he wrote and the themes he explored and his whole obsessive thing about what it means to be a man and all that, if that doesn't agree with you, fine, you don't need to read it. But the fact is, he changed literature forever.
yeah, yeah.
And
And I mean, there's lots of great writers that I don't particularly read. There's great filmmakers that I don't watch because I'm just not interested in the subject matter. It doesn't mean that they're not good filmmakers or you're not a good writer. And Hemingway, like I said in this class, I mean, it was like, oh, come on. I mean, this is an incredibly well written story.
right,
The prose was amazing. How can you not see this is,
right.
exceptionally written? And it doesn't matter that I don't like it. Like I said, I just his books just don't do it for me. I'm just not interested in the subject matter. But I'm not, I'm not gonna. I mean, people need to read them. If you're an English major, you need to read Hemingway.
Yeah, yeah. Yep, yep. And lastly, Craig, I honestly don't know where you can find the Macomber Affair on DVD. I don't know if it's been released. It was a Fox film. I don't think it ever came out as part of the Fox Noir set. And then I know that Fox kind of has stopped producing those films, but they may have licensed it to somebody else. I mean, they stopped producing home entertainment product, but I'm not sure that they haven't licensed it to somebody else. Okay.
Oh, and by the way, the short story was A Clean, Well-Lit Place.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That'd be a good name for a bookstore.
It would be, wouldn't it? Ha, ha,
Yeah.
ha.
There is one in San Francisco. For people outside of San
Sorry,
Francisco who don't know, there is one in San Francisco.
we're not just being strange. Well, we're strange a lot, but yeah. Okay,
Somewhat.
somewhat. This is from DJS. Eddie has from time to time mentioned a few classic horror films, and we know Anne is a fan. So, in a slight digression, could you both talk briefly about some of your favorite horror movies, either parallel with the classic noir era or stylistically comparable?
Okay. Stylistically. Well, one film that I showed on TCM last year or the year before that I really love is The Uninvited with Ray Milland, right? I mean, that's a really good ghost story. I mean, as far as a ghost story goes,
Yeah.
that's a good one. And you mentioned The Haunting, which those two for like I mean, I know that those are more like ghost stories than they are horror movies. I don't think of The Uninvited as a horror movie. It's a ghost story. Um, Horror movies. I mean, I got to say, Night of the Living Dead has a certain noirish element to it stylistically,
Yeah.
and it certainly has to go. If you want a sudden, violent, abrupt, and unexpected ending, there's one for you.
Ah,
I mean, so if you think of, you know, yeah, and I remember seeing that movie when I was too young to see that movie. I saw and I'm going to say this was the West Coast premiere of the film at the Surf Theater in San Francisco, and it had to have been right, what 68,
yeah.
something like that, 68.
60s, yeah.
So I was probably 11 years old
Wow.
when I saw that film. Yeah, a neighbor friend, an older neighbor friend, who could even be watching, Maurice Touvenin. They were French. They lived up the hill from us. His mom was great, Josie Touvenin. And Maurice ended up becoming a fireman in San Francisco. But he took me to see a double bill of Night of the Living Dead and Kwaidan, the Japanese horror film,
My
the
God.
Japanese horror anthology film, right?
Awesome.
That was the double bill. And it was like, okay. And I mean, I got through Night of the Living Dead, but I'm not going to lie. I mean, I was, it's a freak show when you're like 10 or 11 years old
That would have been
watching that film. But at a time when nothing like that existed before. I mean, now, 6-year-olds watch zombie movies now.
Yeah.
But in 1968, if you were a 10-year-old and you watched Night of the Living Dead, that was something that nobody had seen before.
Yeah.
Anyway, you hadn't yet developed the proper aloof, cynical stance to distance yourself from, how terrifying that movie actually is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say cat people, obviously. I mean, really all the Val Lewton stuff. You can't go wrong. And it's all very, very Norrish. Ted and I watched Isle of the Dead a couple weeks ago because I wanted to watch a horror film because it was Halloween season. And he was like, okay, we're watching something classic.
Fantastic. Yeah.
And he
I
had
am
that
I am going to be I'm going to be introducing I Walked with a Zombie on the TCM cruise. So I'm kind of excited
that's
about
my
that.
favorite Val Lewton film.
Oh, there you go.
I love that.
Okay.
I love it. It's so, oh God. I love it because they set up George Sanders to be the Byronic hero, and then winds up being the all-American guy is really the Byronic hero.
Yeah, there you go.
I love that aspect of that film, because it's like, yeah, I love that film. And
I can tell.
Angel Heart is a good like noir horror film.
Yeah, that is a good one. And then there yeah, I liked Angel Heart. I know a lot of people give that film grief, but I thought that was
I love that movie.
pretty good film. Um so would you consider something like The Honeymoon Killers to be a horror film?
Yeah, Honeymoon Killers is a horror film. It's a little, that the gore on that is tipping it to me into being more of a horror film.
Yeah, okay.
I
Because
mean,
because
technically it's a thriller, but I think a lot of people who watch thrillers would not have a good experience watching that film.
well,
They're really,
as
in that sense, it feels more like a horror film to me because they're spree killers.
and it reminds me that I showed Seconds and The Honeymoon Killers as a double bill.
That is my favorite single double bill that you have ever programmed. That made me so happy because you did it on the second Sunday when we have a very low audience attendance, and I was like so excited when I saw that on the schedule. That's my favorite double feature you've ever done.
Thank you for that. It was not universally loved.
I know.
some of the regulars, some of the regulars who who flinch at the fisticuffs and Kiss Me Deadly or something. They were not quite prepared for The Honeymoon Killers. So
and
even though
Silence of the Lamb is noir and horror.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a horror film, but
so what is your favorite horror film of all time?
I mean, Halloween.
Halloween. I would have guessed that. If I was forced to guess that, I would have done that.
Yeah.
So my favorite, I don't even know if it actually qualifies as a horror film, is Don't Look Now.
Oh, that's
Don't Look Now. Is that a horror film?
God, that's a hard call because,
or is it a psychological thriller?
I mean, I'm not sure if it's really a psychological thriller because to me that's like a drama, right? Because it's about a married couple who's lost their child. I mean, there's those elements to it, and it's because they're really haunted by the death of their child. I mean, that's what's really haunting them, and then there's that strange figure.
Now, don't spoil the movie for people who haven't seen it. Because
no, I won't. Except I wanted to tell you, when I was in Venice, I was with my family, but I went off somewhere by myself, and I was going down like the streets of Venice, and I wound up like in this like blind alley, right? And immediately that movie just flashed the friggin' mind.
Very unnerving.
And it is, and it is really like, it's also it really the way it uses Venice as a location is amazing.
Spectacular. I mean, clearly a movie made by a former, well, not a former cinematographer, but Nick Rogue's eye in that movie is just stunning. The editing of that film is incredible. But what I want to say about that movie that I love, and this is not going to spoil it for people who haven't seen it, and is that it's two genres tracking simultaneously, right? I mean, because it's a horror supernatural film on one narrative track, and it's a crime movie on the other narrative track, only you don't know it.
Yeah.
Because you're following the whole story through the mind of Don Sutherland,
Yeah.
And he's kind of veering between the two until he tips over and believes in the supernatural side. And
Yeah.
it's like, that was your mistake. That was your mistake, was believing the supernatural side instead of the very real human side.
Yeah.
What might have had a different ending if he had not bought in all the way.
Yeah, and one
So
other thing I wanted to say about that film too is I think that that is one of the greatest sex scenes in a movie. I think it was the best representation of married sex that I've ever seen in a movie. Just the intimacy. No, because I mean the
no,
intimacy
I hear
in the
you. I
scene is
hear you.
amazing, and so many sex scenes don't. That's what's always missing is they're not really the intimacy that in that scene was incredible. It was like the most realistic love scene I've ever seen.
It's so much so that people just assume it was real, right?
Oh, they were actually, yeah. I mean, I,
Yeah, I
yeah, I
mean,
could,
it
I
was the
could,
70s, right?
yes,
And
yeah,
there, I've heard those stories that Nick Rogue just was like, don't mind me,
yeah,
but I don't, and don't take my word for
yeah,
that. But what you're saying is absolutely true, because you've already learned all this stuff about these characters, which is rarely the case in movies, right? Usually the sex is like strangers, like, oh, it's so hot because they're strangers, but the pall of death is over the whole thing,
mm-hmm,
which makes it even more powerful in many respects. And yeah, and then the way Rogue plays with time
mm-hmm,
in the whole film, but in that scene in particular, that he intercuts the build up to the sex, and the aftermath of the sex are all
yeah,
interchanged during the scene, which is, that was filmmaking in the 70s,
yeah,
you know. And then but now you can still do stuff like that, but it was not considered, now it's just part of the grammar of filmmaking. Back then, that was like a huge deal. Love that movie. Uh, okay. Am I reading the last one?
reading the last one.
Okay. And I don't know who this is from, but they'll recognize it when I read it. Some actors don't like to see themselves on screen. Anyone like this in noir? Hmm. I don't think I could do it if I was an actor, which I am assuming this person means they couldn't watch themselves on screen.
Yeah.
And then he asks, how about you, Eddie? Do you study yourself on your TCM appearances? Is it a problem for you to see yourself? Um, I don't know. Um, I don't I don't recall any actor telling me that they couldn't watch themselves on screen. The only um, no, none of them. I know that they can't watch other people on screen for one reason or another. Like, I remember how hard it was for Barbara Hale to watch her late husband Bill Williams on screen, and she couldn't do it. She had to leave the theater when we showed. She appeared with The Window, and then I put it on a double bill with Deadline at Dawn, which Bill Williams is the star of. And then she started to watch it, and then she couldn't do it because it made her cry. Um, and it was very genuine. But I don't know. I know I've heard of singers who like don't listen to themselves. I remember Linda Ronstadt saying that one time, that she can sing, but she doesn't listen to the recordings played back.
Yeah.
People just tell her that was great or something like that. But I find that very hard to believe of actors.
Yeah.
Like, you sort of have to look so that you know what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I mean, but think about, stage actors, who knows? I mean, right? There's nothing to see. You're just in it. You're just
Right.
acting, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's a shock for some stage actors when they see themselves on screen. That's a fascinating subject and something I've always enjoyed reading about and learning about. like the difference between stage and film acting, because the camera gets in so close that it like terrifies. John Garfield always called it the monster. Then they point the monster at you, and it's like, oh my God, but no, I don't. I used to have a problem, but not anymore. It is a very strange thing happens to you mentally when you do this for a living, in that it's not really you. You're watching, and it's just like, okay, that was okay. The guy did okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I because I write all the stuff I say on TCM, I'm it's second nature to me. So I'm just kind of thinking about it more from a writing standpoint. And then I look at me in front of the camera as the actor who isn't supposed to screw up the writing. Right? I mean, that's it. And so, good. So when I do watch it, and I don't always, but when I do watch it, it's like, good, he didn't screw that up.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay, so I guess we are good. We are done.
Okay, so I guess just things to think about is we have North City Christmas coming up in December in San Francisco.
No, we have North City Christmas coming up on
God.
December 13th, Tuesday, December 13th, at the Grand Lake Theater in Oakland, California. And we will be showing in a great Christmas movie in 3D, I, the Jury, the restored version of I, the Jury, with Biff Elliott and Peggy Castle, with cinematography by John Alton, 3D cinematography by John Alton. So I think that will be tremendous fun, being able to see that in 3D on a big screen in a movie theater. We're not going to do a double bill because it is a Tuesday night, and nobody's going to stay for the second feature, even if I had one. So that's the plan. So tickets for that should be up pretty soon. I'm not exactly sure when that is, but it is definitely happening.
It's actually, if we're on schedule, it's actually today.
Okay, very good.
And then this is airing.
And then, Anne, you have to remind me that I need to order a bunch of 3D glasses.
You do need to order a bunch of 3D glasses. And also just let everybody know, the day of North City Christmas is when we publish the film schedule for North City 20.
That's right.
That always comes up the same day. So we announced that you get to see a slideshow of the films if you're in person, but if you can't make it to North City Christmas, it will be online. That's when we'll go.
The full program will go online. We will probably sell passports to the whole festival starting much sooner.
Yes.
Because those tremendous supporters of the festival who just buy the passport regardless of what we're showing. And I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to, nobody asked. So I'm not going to tell you what is going to happen, what the program theme is or any of that stuff. But it's very celebratory, obviously, because we are celebrating our 20th anniversary in the Bay. Yeah, I can't believe it's been 20 years. Holy cow! So there will be an anniversary theme to the festival, and I'm greatly looking forward to it.
Yeah, and just one more thing for people that are coming in from out of town, because people always ask us this, is that we usually have a hotel where we work out a special rate. As soon as we have that worked out, I will publish it on our news page and we'll send it out with our newsletters and stuff. But I know that sometimes I get people messaging me ahead of time. And so, yeah, once that's set, we'll publicize that information.
Great. Fantastic. Okay, Anne, I will see you when I get back from the cruise.
Oh my God, I can't believe it. Yes, enjoy your cruise. And yeah, drop in the comments below if you're going on the cruise, because I'd be interested to know if anybody that's watching this is going on the cruise. Cool.
And if you are, by all means, say hello.
Okay. All right. So we will see you guys hopefully in 2 weeks.
Okay, very good. Bye, everybody.